To discuss, we're joined by the Executive Officer at Freedom Under Law, Judith February. Judith, thank you for being with us. Before we get to Judge Hlophe, could you comment on the Public Protector? You obviously support her being suspended, but many this week were saying the timing of it was suspicious. It raised concern about the presidency because the president suspended her before the Western Cape High Court had said that would be valid, and immediately after she had suggested she would be investigating what happened on the farm.
Good evening, Francis. Yes, we do welcome the President's suspension of the Public Protector. He is entitled to do that in terms of the Constitution, given that there is a process that has been started in Parliament and which in fact started in February 2020 for the removal of the Public Protector. So first is that the President is well within his constitutional right to in fact have suspended her. But of course, as you rightly point out, the timing is, shall we say, auspicious if you are the president, because the Public Protector has announced that she would be investigating the burglary that happened at his farm in Phala Phala in 2020. And so while we do need to separate the issues and also indeed separate the ruling of the Western Cape High Court, because there's plenty of evidence both in the public domain and from successive court reviews of the Public Protector's reports that suggest that she, in fact, there is very good grounds to remove her, that she is not only incompetent, but she is unfit for office, and some might say has inserted herself into the factional battles of the ANC. And so, however, the timing is unfortunate, and the President, I think, ought to have acted to suspend her far faster, but we know that he is often not given to speedy action. And I think here he's therefore opened himself up to criticism that indeed he was not wanting this investigation, and therefore he'd moved so speedily to suspend her.
Yeah. And he may have delayed to give the courts time to look at the matter. Is that happening in the case of Judge John Hlophe? Why do you think the JSC is not moving to suspend him?
Well, it's very difficult for me to put myself in the shoes of the JSC. What we can say is that in terms of the Constitution, Section 177(3), the President has the power to suspend a judge who's been found guilty of misconduct, and we know that Judge Hlophe, this misconduct matter has been dragging on, Francis, for 14 years. But the President has to do that on the recommendation, the advice of the Judicial Service Commission. Now, we know that the JSC has been in a state of flux. It has been in many ways unfit for purpose in the recent past. There is new leadership now under a new Chief Justice. And while the JSC has not recommended that Judge President Hlophe be suspended, it would be our view that he has been found guilty of misconduct. There's a process for his impeachment. There's overwhelming evidence that he ought to be suspended, that is the right thing to do in the circumstances. And what we're hoping, Francis, is that what's happened with regards to the Public Protector and the suspension, and also as we can see that the delay has caused had a deleterious impact on that institution, that the JSC, under new leadership of Chief Justice Zondo, would in fact connect the dots and see that speedy action here is required in a very similar way to the suspension of the Public Protector.
If you did have to put yourself in the shoes of the members of the Judicial Service Commission, do you agree that they may feel they have to tread extremely carefully here? Because there are rising perceptions that some judges are biased, that some are being politically targeted, and Hlophe is a hero for many.
Well, yes, Francis, and I guess that unfortunately a lot of this has been tied into the factional battles that we see within the ANC, and unfortunately it has tainted many of our democratic institutions. We saw from recent Afrobarometer surveys that the trust in democratic institutions in South Africa has declined. And so Judge Hlophe has this misconduct finding against him is an important one, and it makes the matter very urgent that he be suspended. Indeed, there will be some who say that he is being hung, drawn and quartered. But in fact, a full bench of a court confirmed that the impeachment proceedings ought to continue against him and confirmed this misconduct ruling. So, in fact, there is enough in the public domain to indicate that what is happening in the Western Cape division of the High Court is, in fact, has a deleterious impact on that division. And unfortunately, Francis, these are very difficult times for our democracy and for the institutions that make up our the constitutional framework. And there will always be those who have different viewpoints. And unfortunately, a lot of this has been politicized. But now is not the time for us to be cowering. In fact, it is a moment for the Chief Justice, the JSC, to be clear-eyed about what needs to be done, and that where the evidence presents itself in such an overwhelming fashion as it has with regard to Judge President Hlophe, that they make the recommendation to suspend him.
So you said a full bench upheld that decision. You're talking about the Gauteng High Court, I believe, but he is trying to appeal that. How long do you think the process will take? How many options does he have? When is the legal challenge going to be over, if you had to predict?
Well, that is difficult to predict, because as we have seen with many of these of the individuals who are in similar situations, we see it with regard to former President Jacob Zuma, the kind of legal strategy that is employed. Some might call it Stalingrad, but taking every single legal and process point. That is the right of litigants, although in some instances one can say that some of the litigation has been, in my view, scurrilous and vexatious, and has really pushed our legal system to the brink, because there's certain issues that, one as a lawyer would never have thought would be aired in court, rescission applications to the Constitutional Court and so on, which is an apex court. And so much of that has been to try and stymie accountability. And we can have a separate discussion about that. But Judge President Hlophe, I have absolutely no doubt, will try to take every single point. He will appeal. He will go to the Constitutional Court if he can. Many of the attorneys and advocates who are acting are similar, are people who have represented other individuals who've been compromised and so on. And so I have no doubt that he will do that. At some point, though, it will have to come to an end, and at some point, Parliament will be seized with the matter. And so, but in the meantime, Francis, this is causing it has a very real negative impact on the working of the Western Cape division of the High Court. And that, I think, we must not lose sight of, because it is ordinary people where the courts are in dysfunction. And this week we saw an excellent report from Ground Up about the rot in some of the divisions. And that causes a real dysfunction. And that impacts on ordinary people. The Judge President has enormous power to allocate cases to run a division. And so it's very important that Judge President Hlophe be removed and that he be suspended, as we've called for.
All right, thank you for explaining your stance. Executive Officer at Freedom Under Law, Judith February.